Welcome. Another traveler's come into my den for some knowledge on anime, I see. I'm Itachi Uchiha from the show Naruto, and whether you watch anime or not, more knowledge can never hurt. Please, take a seat. Now just look into my eyes as I put you into a genjutsu, or hypnotized state, if you will, as I take you along on a journey of an underdog story like no other. If you don't mind, since it's just the two of us, I would like to switch to my normal speaking voice. Sasuke doesn't need to know. Let's get to the matter that you're really here for. A concept to note about anime is its ability to connect others around the world. When looking at how far McDonald's has grown, it is safe to say, no matter when an American eats a burger from McDonald's, someone in Japan is doing the same. Just as how comics were famous across the globe in their prime, the same can be said for manga. Real quick, allow me to give a common anecdote. Two adolescents, thousands of miles away, are both fond of a particular anime character, let's say Goku. So fond, they decide to meet at a convention of other anime watchers dressed up as Goku. With just a glimpse of each other, never having met in their lives, they will start screaming Kamehameha, all while laughing. Anime has the power to be an icebreaker because finding another person who disregards the stigma about a cherished topic is enough to secure a bond. Before we continue, traveler, I must say this because there is in fact a stigma about anime, one that has taken root in both Japan and America. Each of the examples I gave are all mediums in their own right. McDonald's is not just a burger joint, but they also have chicken nuggets, biscuits, and frappes. Comics are not just about superheroes, and even when they are, they're not all about action. Sometimes the Spider-Man comic is told solely on his relationship with his murdered uncle. The same can be said for anime. Many people hold the notion that anime is only action or only perverted. While there is a load of both, anime is not one TV show or genre. It is a medium. Just as there are different TV shows, there are different anime. This stigma did not suddenly appear, but was slowly cultivated, in America at least, thanks to the fine productions from Disney. In case you aren't aware, anime is short for Japanese animation. So if anyone claims that Avatar: The Last Airbender or Teen Titans are anime, they are dead wrong. These TV shows were actually animated, in America I should add, with inspiration from Japanese animation. Ever wonder what inspired the creators of the first anime productions? Well, here it is. Ever since Steamboat Willie's debut in 1928, Disney has been the ever-running kingpin of animation. Over time, few other American corporations like Pixar and DreamWorks have built big names, but none can come close to the popularity Disney has obtained. Studio Ghibli, the creators of many blockbuster anime movies, may object, but with the addition of Disney Plus, that argument can barely stand. As such, it didn't take many years from Disney's start to become internationally known. Many hits were played in Japanese homes. Even Disney cartoon panels were seen within Japan. While the corporation was growing, Japan itself experienced an unprecedented devastation. Refusing to surrender, Japan was hit with 2 atomic bombs that swept thousands off the face of the earth near the end of World War II. Depression, economically and emotionally, hit all over Japan. The pride had been blown away. In the process of reconstructing after the war, many industries were underfunded, and the animation industry was one of them. With few willing to battle against the rising animation corporation, Disney continued to flourish its way into the 50s, and it would have kept rising in Japan had not a manga by the Boy Robot appeared on the scene. After World War II, there was immense humiliation in the atmosphere. However, many culture innovations came forth during this time which aided in building back the pride they had lost. One of these Japanese creations is called manga. Manga is the equivalent of Western comics. Who is to say this for sure, but it is most likely based off of them since comics already existed. Instead of front to back, these particular books read from back to front, and manga can be seen as another case of cultural integration within Japan. One of the first manga in particular began to gain plenty of popularity. Mighty Atom, a manga about a boy robot who decides to become a superhero, was a hit among children and young adults. In a country with many problems following the war, a very uplifting story was well received, so well that it received an animated TV show in 1959, 7 years after its first volume. An accomplishment in of itself, it was also one of the few animated TV shows that originated in Japan. It didn't take long before it reached the eyes of American tourists, and from there it was history. Mighty Atom, dubbed Atom Boy in America, took over family screens across the US and beyond. The first of its kind to reach this status, and certainly not the last. The show was a launching point that kicked off the future of anime. More manga artists and animators appeared as the field started to get more recognition from the public. By the 1970s, many animations flourished in Japan, and by the 90s, many of these shows were broadcast worldwide, especially in America. When looking through history, anime has come further than anyone could have expected. The same can be said for animation in general. For both standpoints of America and Japan, it is obvious to say that those who grew up watching Mickey shorts could never expect to see films such as Frozen or The Princess and the Frog, for more reasons than one. Over time, animation became a prevalent industry in modern life. As animation grew, anime grew along with it, and not just the visual aspect. In its early years of popularity, manga was catered specifically towards males between 50 to 30 years old. The evolution of manga can be mirrored similarly to comics. The most popular magazine for manga during this time, which still is the most popular, is the magazine Weekly Shonen Jump. The title literally translates to boy. Much like Mighty Atom, many manga that were partnered with the magazine were catered towards young boys. Mobile Suit Gundam was a manga that featured a tween boy as an underdog becoming highly respected for piloting a robot to save the planet. It was later branched into an anime and became insanely popular. Stories from Shonen Jump often followed the trope of toddler or young adult males leading lives way better than your average human. Better than the guy making this video at least. Even adult males fancied this magazine with another manga in it titled Speed Racer, being watched by kids and adults alike. It was so popular the word shonen itself was dubbed as a genre that these manga conformed to. This was not the case just in Japan either. Most of the manga and anime coming to America was catered towards young males. Many American men who grew up in the late 60s can vividly reminisce about the Speed Racer series. However, the men-dominated audience slowly began to diminish as more feminine manga started to surface. During this time, many movements formed in countries across the world for equality. As a nation grows socially, so does the entertainment. In 1947, women voted for the first time in Japan, and since then the effort for the feminist movement finally started to sprout the fruits of its labor. Women continued to struggle from discrimination, from laws to the workplace. During this time of increasing women recognition, a new type of manga has come forth. The shoujo style or feminine style of manga came forth with many stories carrying a female protagonist in a romantic situation. Much like the Bronies, who were males that devoted their lives and money to all things My Little Pony, Sailor Moon gained a heavy cult during and many years after its airing. The social aspect was not the only thing changing in the 80s and 90s, but the visual aspect as well. Coming from the notion that manga is based off of Western comics and animation, many Japanese products compiled most of the Western art style into their work. Characters had few definition and detail and were also drawn with Western-like features. Eventually, artists in Japan put on new types of art style, further incorporating Eastern art style and creating entirely new aesthetics seen in many common anime today. Many anime from the late 90s and up have stylistic features. Some characters are drawn with eyes as big as my fist, and others buffer characters are drawn muscular to the extreme. Sailor Moon's a perfect example of this transformation, with the big eyes signifying the purity in the female leads, and sharp eyes to show the evil villain. Many anime continue to use the trope in particular. Even with this branching out of anime characteristics and occasional viewings from adult watchers, the stigma in society took hold and stayed for a long time. You okay there? Hope my voice didn't put you to sleep. As I noted earlier, anime and manga isn't for everyone. Few people, mostly artists themselves, do not consider the anime and manga art style as artistic and tend to despise such work. Few others dislike it due to their prejudice towards Japan. Most people, however, dislike anime for two reasons: the childish connotation it has, and the extreme fan base it attracts. As I said earlier, Disney can be claimed as one of the causes of this stigma. For literally decades, the productions coming from the corporation have been directed towards children. The original Mickey animations were wacky and similar to future productions of the Tom and Jerry or Looney Tunes. The exaggerated fast-paced movements and inanimate objects somehow having life within them are all characteristics found within Disney's work. I mean, it's obvious that Disney has been an advocate of children's entertainment, but I just thought it couldn't hurt to compare. The numerous princess movies are known immensely around the world, many of which are based off of stories with twisted plots and then tweaked to fit younger audiences and co-align with the general public. They taught children many lessons and caused childhood memories many will never forget. With many other businesses following suit with cartoons, it is no wonder why many people associate animation productions as being made for children. As a result, anime has had the short end of the stick with the general population. Not that it did not attribute this notion on its own. Remember the Mobile Suit Gundam anime mentioned earlier? Anime like these that were made to sympathize with younger audiences enforced the idea of anime's childish nature. The advertisement of toys, figurines, games, and cards to children certainly did not help the case. On the other hand, Japan did not face this stigma in its early days. Many animated movies were catered more toward the 18 and above audience. While Disney covered very important themes, they were seen through the lens of a child, using metaphors and through characters and situations. Anime movies did the same, however through a more vivid and straightforward sense. Of course, they had supernatural and action within them, but the animation was very explicit. Some examples include Akira, Ghost in the Shell, and the complete tragedy of Berserk. One notable movie example is Perfect Blue. The only one on the list that has no supernatural or sci-fi elements, Perfect Blue is an intense psychological thriller surrounding the topic of the pressures of fame in the spotlight. A former member of an idol group turned actress, the main character suffers from the pressures of an unstoppable stalker and the responsibility to uphold the pure image she is expected to have. Of course, compared to the more light-hearted anime movies produced, these did not gain as much popularity. Now, that statement does not mean to disregard the mass fame these movies received, but it's like America, anime began to slowly mean for children 17 and under. That being said, the US did accept anime, at least some cable channels did. The channel that attributed most to the current appreciation for anime would be Cartoon Network. Since the 1980s, Cartoon Network has bought claims to broadcast numerous anime over time. The ever-popular Sailor Moon was one of these particular shows that made it overseas. When it comes to foreign shows or shows in general, studios choose what shows to broadcast based on the potential they have to be a hit among entertainment consumers. The decision to include anime was nothing but genius in the terms of business. Animations like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Were gold mines for capitalist endeavors. The video games and card battles from these shows sold like no other. No matter what school you stumbled upon, there would be people carrying around entire binders of Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. During the golden age of Nintendo, sales of Pokemon games were through the roof. More on Pokemon later. There was another reason why anime developed an association to being only for children. Not only did adults have a conceived notion that animation is childish, but also so did the majority of children. Ask someone who grew up in the late 1990s and early 2000s what it felt like being someone who watched anime, and I'll bet you they will say it was a struggle. Geeks and nerds were considered of less value because the hobbies they enjoyed were deemed useless and lazy by the general public. Anime lovers were lumped in with this group and received heavy backlash for it. Just mentioning their like towards the medium would bring disgusting stares, much less playing or wearing anything relating to it. In no way am I saying there is no stigma today, but it is most definitely not as bad as it was back then. As much of a setback the merchandise age of anime set in place, Cartoon Network introduced anime to many young kids. When these younger kids grew up, anime was a common occurrence like any other show. However, there was also another network that took over after 12 a.m. Once Cartoon Network went off, Adult Swim came on. In this television network, the program known as Toonami streamed nothing but anime to viewers. Along with this came, debatably, the most popular anime in America, Dragon Ball Z. Now, this show launched many young teens into the spiral of Japanese animation. Now on to the second reason anime gets much flack in the general community. Out of the number of people who watch anime today, it can be safe to say about 10% of them take things to the, as I said earlier, extreme. Back in the 90s, the percentage was well above 50%. Obviously, no real statistics were done on this, so these are guesses of the minimum percentage at least. Within the anime community in America, there are those who revolve their lives around the topic. People's rooms will be decorated with the wallpapers of their favorite anime characters and shelves piled high with manga. Some may often cosplay as said characters even if they are of a different sex. Years ago, this would call for serious ridicule. However, such a lifestyle is generally accepted today. That being said, we have not hit extremes just yet. What I just described is known as an otaku in the American anime community. While the term is more broad in Japan, their version of otaku can relate to such people as well. The extreme side, by American standards, are known as weeaboos. From the connoisseur himself, Filthy Frank, a well-known critic of life concepts and music, said a weeaboo is a non-Japanese person who basically denounces their own culture and classifies themselves as a Japanese person. Many weeaboos often end up disrespecting the culture they admire due to their perceived conception of Japanese culture through anime. There's a thin line between an otaku and a weeaboo, however the differences are painstakingly easy to see, especially if you ever take a trip to a local or international anime convention. The Japanese somewhat equivalent of weeaboos are called hikikomori. These people, once called neets, are those who have completely neglected their social life as they often stay in their room for weeks at a time. Most hikikomori from ages 16 to 40 live with their parents. These types are often considered the face of the anime fan base for non-watchers, mainly due to the fact that the worst of things tend to stand out more than the normal. I certainly do not condone these individuals for their interests, however there is a belief that one's desires should not get to the point where they take over one's life. As I said, the number of these weeaboos or hikikomori in the current anime community is a small percentage, but the number of weeaboos period have certainly not decreased, meaning that there has been a drastic increase in general population who enjoy anime as the present stigma continues to decrease. Children who grew up watching anime in the early 2000s generally continue to do so into the present thanks to the reinforcement from cable networks. Eventually, anime became as normal as watching a movie. Just in Los Angeles, the first anime convention had roughly 1,750 attendees in 1992, and in 2019 they housed over 115,000 attendees for just one day. Remember that Pokemon Go phase the entire world went through? That was one of the first times an animated related topic captured positive attention from the general public. Anime has come a long way, becoming more accepted as the years passed. If you still have doubts, look at the grossing statistics of anime movies across time. The highest grossing film in 1997 was Princess Mononoke, with 169 million worldwide. The current movie in 2021 is the Demon Slayer movie, standing at a high 428 million, and it hasn't even reached audiences in America, appearing later this month. Anime has pushed and struggled to societal constraints to reach the fame it contains today. It is honestly surprising that inspiration came from America to produce such a culturally different medium. With the spark cast down from the US, Japanese animators took it and guided that spark until it became a wildfire. A fire so big, it was able to come around and scorch the very source it came from. Now that is how you use the Amaterasu. Even with the big jump in popularity, there is still a heavy consensus of dislike towards anime. In America and Japanese cultures, counting all ages, anime watchers are still in the minority. Most of the anime crowd are those between the ages 13 and 40, which makes sense considering how recent anime has officially hit its growth spurt. Right now, anime is at its peak. With that said, anime's growth has yet to be stunted. There are entire Instagram accounts based on cosplaying anime characters that have hundreds of thousands of followers. Celebrities have shown new interest with no fear of ridicule. Whether or not it's for their own popularity, it cannot be denied that it certainly boosts the fame of anime across the world. Anime is constantly growing, and the cycle of exchange between America and Japan shows no sign of ending.